Hello and welcome to the teacher channel. Thank you so much, and this is a very important video, very important, and I want to thank you for visiting my channel. Okay, this is an interesting place to be because we're talking about life, okay, and how to save life. As you know, or maybe you don't know, but if you don't know, let me let you know that this channel is all about how to save life. It is all about how to respond to emergency when emergency comes knocking. Okay, remember that emergency is an unplanned incident, unplanned situation, okay, that requires immediate attention. Immediate action is needed. So that is emergency, the definition of emergency. And one of the responses that you give to emergency is first aid. All right, so there are numerous emergencies. I will not be able to exhaust the list if I begin to count the emergencies that are known. Okay, you have accident, you have high blood pressure, you have heart attack, you have cardiac arrest, you have unconsciousness, you have diabetes, low sugar, high sugar, asthma, allergic reactions, spinal cord injury. So there are many emergencies. How about fractures? How about falling from some height and having a brain injury? So there are numerous emergencies. Okay, there are even environmental related emergencies like hypothermia. There is a heat related emergency like heat exhaustion, heat stroke. So there are many of them, many emergencies, and they can happen any time. All right, so the reason why I have this channel is to equip us, to equip the public, equip anybody who comes across this channel, give you the relevant information you need, the awareness you need about these emergencies, and more importantly, giving you that confidence through knowledge. They say knowledge is power. So when you get knowledge and you know what to do, you tend to do better when you are aware. Okay, so this is why this channel is existing. Okay, so so you can subscribe if you have not. Okay, please just hit the subscribe button. You can also turn on your notification bell so that when I upload new video, you get notified. Okay, you can like and share the video. Okay, so thank you once again, and I am ready to go. Today I am talking about something very important, very important. Okay, and you can see on the board, so I'm talking to us about shock. What is shock? What causes shock? Okay, how do you recognize shock? And then we'll talk about signs and symptoms. So when we talk about how do you recognize shock, so we're talking about what are the signs and symptoms that when you see them or when you hear them, okay, so you know that there is shock from that. So more importantly, we're going to talk about what is the first aid for shock. So how do you respond? When you recognize there is shock, you know there is shock. You know for sure that is shock because of signs and symptoms you have seen. How do you respond? Okay, so those are the things I want to cover. This is important. Okay, now I will start with the first item. Important question: what is shock? Shock is not easy to define. Okay, because it has multiple meanings, multiple definitions depending on context. Okay, so people use this word very often. I am shocked to hear. I am shocked because this happened. Okay, so you hear about electric shock. You hear about septic shock. You hear about anaphylactic shock. You hear about hypovolemic shock. You hear about cardiogenic shock. You even hear about neurogenic shock. So shock has multiple dimensions. So it's not easy. But to make it easy for us, I'm going to look at this from a medical point of view. So I'm going to exclude some of the shocks that you know, some of the shocks that people use, especially the emotional type of shock. So what I'm talking about is not the emotional type of shock. I'm not talking about the electric shock. So I'm talking about medical. So I will give a general definition. Okay, what shock is. What is shock? What is shock? So what is, okay, I'm going to say what is medical shock. Okay, so I'm looking at it from medical perspective. So I'm looking at shock from first aid point of view and from medical perspective. Okay, so that we can put things in proper perspective here. So what is medical shock? So a generic definition is shock is inadequate delivery of blood, oxygen, and nutrients to the vital organs of the body. So what that means is that the blood flow to the vital organs is very low. And when that happens, shock may follow. So vital organs. So inadequate delivery of, there are three elements here. So inadequate delivery of blood, oxygen, and nutrients to the vital organs of the body. So if this happens, okay, so medical shock will follow. If the delivery of blood, oxygen, and nutrients to the vital organs of the body happen, then shock will follow. So vital organs here, we mean brain. Okay, so brain, heart, okay, heart, lungs, kidneys, and liver. So these are the vital organs. So if the delivery of blood, oxygen, nutrient to these vital organs happens, okay, if there's inadequate delivery of blood, oxygen, and nutrient to these organs, shock, medical shock will happen. So that is the definition we're going to use. Now, what are the causes of shock? What are the causes of shock? Medical shock. So I'm going to say causes of medical shock. So what can lead to this? So there are 5 of them I'm going to discuss from first aid point of view. One of them is heart attack. So heart attack is one. Okay, you also have severe Severe blood loss is another cause of shock. Another one is severe burns. Severe burns. Another one is severe allergic reaction. Okay, and then I'm going to put here spinal or nerve injury. Okay, so any of these can lead to medical shock. Heart attack, yes, of course, you know that the heart is the one that pumps the blood. Okay, so, and if you look at the definition of shock, is inadequate delivery of blood, oxygen, and nutrients to the vital organs. Which organ is responsible for pumping? Is heart. So when the heart is under attack, which is heart attack, okay, so the heart is not performing optimally, and that can drop the blood flow to the body, thereby resulting into shock. So another one is severe. Sorry, this is severe blood loss. Severe blood loss. So when somebody is losing blood, okay, and then nothing is done. If nothing is done and somebody keeps on losing blood, okay, blood is flowing out. So by and large, it's a matter of time, shock may follow. Okay, severe burns. Okay, so when somebody has severe burns, that person will lose a lot of plasma, blood in the blood, and the person may lose a lot of fluid. Okay, another one is severe allergic reaction, and this one is called anaphylaxis, and is the deadly type of allergic reaction, and the shock from this is called anaphylactic shock. Anaphylactic shock. Okay, anaphylactic shock. So another one is spinal or nerve injury. So any of those can lead to shock. Shock from heart attack is called cardiogenic shock. Okay, cardiogenic shock. Okay, shock from spinal or nerve injury is called neurogenic shock. Neurogenic shock. Okay, and the shock from severe blood loss is called hypovolemic shock. Hypovolemic shock. Hypovolemic shock. Okay. Okay, and the shock from severe allergic reaction is called anaphylactic shock. So generally, shock results to significant drop in blood flow, to the point that the vital organs are not receiving enough blood, oxygen, and nutrient. That is very, 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 very further. That is deadly. Okay. So shock is not an ordinary emergency, and it's not an emergency that one can joke with, because you're talking about vital organs, important organs of the body, not receiving enough blood, oxygen, and nutrient. That means that the whole cells of the body, the whole systems of the body, the whole organs, tissue, cells, everything gradually will be packing. Will be dying. Everything will be gradually shutting down. It's a gradual process. So that is more reason why shock is a very serious emergency. Okay, in fact, shock is a medical emergency. Whatever you see it, you need to treat it with every seriousness, high degree of urgency. Okay, so that that is the causes of shock. So there are 5 of them: the heart attack, severe blood loss, spinal or nerve injury, severe burns, severe allergic reaction. Any of them can lead to shock. Okay. So how do you recognize shock? So that's what I will talk about next. Signs and symptoms. How do you recognize shock? How do you know that this emergency is pointing to shock? How do you know? So recognition of shock. Recognition or signs and symptoms. Signs and symptoms of shock. Okay, remember that signs are things you can see. Okay, signs are things you can see. Symptoms are things that the person has to tell you. You can't see symptoms. Somebody must tell you. Okay, example of symptom is a headache or pain. Okay, or even fear and anxiety. Those you cannot see. It's only the person who is experiencing them know. And if the person does not verbalize that, you may not know. So they are called symptoms. But any other things, any other manifestation that you can see, you can describe it, those belong to signs. For instance, hives or rashes or pale skin, the skin that is turning blue, or bleeding, or pink eyes. So those are signs. So for shock, there are some signs, some things when you see them or when you hear about them in combination. So if you see 1, 2, 3 of them, you can now say for sure there is shock going on there. So number 1 is skin. So skin, the skin of the person, the skin, so you look at pale, cool, and clammy skin. Okay, clammy. So skin is pale, cool, and clammy, sweaty. Okay, so anybody who is in shock, you may begin to see stuff like that. And number 2, you can see rapid weak pulse, talking about the heartbeat. The heartbeat may be a little bit faster, but it's weak. Okay, remember that the pulse is a reflection of the heartbeat, how well the heart is performing. Another sign there is rapid, shallow breathing. Now the lungs are also being affected. Remember vital organs here. Okay, this is about heart, this is about lungs. Okay, so rapid, shallow breathing. And that makes sense. If you look at the definition of shock, inadequate delivery of blood. So here blood is the blood, the heart is responsible for the pumping. So when the flow of blood drops, of course the heart is going to be beckoned upon to pump more. So that's why it is rapid, but because the heart itself is not receiving enough blood and oxygen, so it's weak. So the lungs also will be beckoned upon to bring oxygen. So that's why the lungs will step it or try to breathe more. But because the lungs itself are not receiving enough blood and oxygen, so it's not strong enough to do that work. So that's why it's shallow there. Okay, so these three are very, very classic signs and symptoms of shock. But there are others you may see. There are other signs and symptoms like nausea, Okay, nausea may be there. Somebody may even vomit. Somebody may be thirsty. The person may be thirsty. And you also get maybe anxiety will increase. So increase in anxiety, increase in anxiety. So the arrow pointing up means increase in anxiety. And now, so I'll put that as number 4. Number 5 is what we call level of consciousness. LOC, level of consciousness. It depends on where the shock is at. Okay, so shock is like, shock goes like this, okay? A slope, slopes up. So you can get mild shock, okay? Moderate, okay? And severe. So we're here, severe. Okay, so severe shock. So it goes up with the time. Okay, as time goes on, the shock will be climbing up. So the level of consciousness depends on where somebody is at on this graph, right? So somebody may still be alert, or somebody may somehow be drowsy or tending toward unconsciousness, depending. Okay, it depends on how many organs have been affected. So if it is that somebody is still mild shock, the person may still be alert to some extent. Okay, so those are the signs and symptoms, how you recognize them. Okay, now let's finally talk about first aid, what to do. Okay, what to do when you recognize that somebody is in shock. What do you do? Okay, so first aid, what do you do? What action do you perform as a response? Okay, what actions do you perform as response? What I want to say here is that shock is a medical emergency. It's not a joke. It's not something to joke with. So you must move very quickly, because organs are shutting down gradually. Okay, so it's a medical emergency. So you have to call emergency number, okay, 911, or your local emergency number. Okay, that is what you're supposed to do. You must call, because it's a very serious critical condition. So you have to call 911. Okay, you have to, don't give this person anything to drink. Don't give, okay, anything to drink or eat. The person may be thirsty, but this is not the time to drink or eat. Don't do that. Okay, so another thing you have to do is that you have to maintain the person's temperature. Maintain the person's temperature. The person's temperature. Okay, so this is important. So you may need to cover this person. You don't want the person to lose temperature. The person's temperature. Okay. Of course, monitor the person. Monitor the person. Okay. Okay. Monitor the person, especially keep your eyes on the vital signs. Okay. And then reassure the person while you wait for the EMS to come. Reassure the person. Okay. So, and provide other first aid as needed. Okay. So you must call 911. Don't give the person anything to eat or drink. Maintain the person's temperature. So you may have to give additional layer. Okay, so that's how you respond to somebody in shock. I believe you have really understood something about shock, and you are better equipped to respond to that if you see it. So thank you once again for watching this video, and please, I want you to share, I want you to like, and if you have not subscribed, please do so. Thank you. Bye.